Question 1. Research into the admissions process at Qasemi Academic College of Education reveals an applicant with a history of academic underperformance in secondary school due to documented family health crises. The applicant has since demonstrated significant improvement in their final year of secondary school and has provided strong testimonials from teachers highlighting their resilience and renewed commitment to education. The admissions committee is reviewing their application. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of fair and equitable admissions while upholding academic standards? Option A. Offer conditional admission contingent on the applicant achieving a significantly higher score on a supplementary entrance examination, without fully considering the provided testimonials or the context of their past difficulties. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire academic history, paying close attention to the extenuating circumstances, and evaluate their recent performance and supporting testimonials to determine their current readiness for college-level study. Option C. Grant immediate admission based on the applicant's stated commitment and recent improvement, without a detailed assessment of their academic preparedness or the impact of the extenuating circumstances. Option D. Automatically reject the application due to the historical academic underperformance, as it indicates a lack of consistent academic ability. Correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire academic history, paying close attention to the extenuating circumstances, and evaluate their recent performance and supporting testimonials to determine their current readiness for college-level study. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a candidate's personal circumstances and the academic integrity expected by Qasemi Academic College of Education. The admissions committee must balance fairness to the applicant with the need to uphold the college's standards and ensure that all admitted students are genuinely qualified and prepared for the rigors of higher education. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legitimate challenges and attempts to circumvent the admissions process. The correct approach involves a thorough, individualized assessment of the applicant's situation, focusing on understanding the root causes of their academic performance and evaluating their potential for success despite past difficulties. This approach aligns with principles of fairness and equity, recognizing that diverse life experiences can impact academic trajectories. It requires the admissions committee to seek objective evidence of the applicant's current capabilities and motivation, such as standardized test scores, letters of recommendation that address the extenuating circumstances, and potentially a personal interview. The justification for this approach lies in the ethical imperative to provide opportunities to deserving candidates while maintaining academic rigor. It also reflects a commitment to holistic review, which considers a candidate's background and potential beyond just grades. An incorrect approach would be to automatically disqualify the applicant based solely on their past academic record, without considering the mitigating circumstances. This fails to acknowledge the potential for growth and improvement and can be seen as discriminatory, as it penalizes individuals for factors beyond their immediate control. Another incorrect approach would be to grant admission without sufficient evidence of the applicant's current readiness, potentially leading to academic failure and a disservice to both the student and the institution. This approach compromises academic standards and could be perceived as unfair to other applicants who met the criteria without such considerations. A third incorrect approach would be to request information that is overly intrusive or irrelevant to the admissions decision, violating the applicant's privacy and potentially leading to legal challenges. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured review process that includes 1. Acknowledging and documenting the extenuating circumstances presented by the applicant. 2. Gathering objective evidence to corroborate the applicant's claims and assess their current academic standing and potential. 3. Consulting relevant college policies on admissions and special considerations. 4. Engaging in a collegial discussion among the admissions committee members to weigh all factors. 5. Making a decision based on a comprehensive evaluation that balances fairness, academic integrity, and the college's mission. Question 2. Operational review demonstrates a pattern of late submissions and significantly lower grades for a particular student in a core pedagogical methods course, despite prior strong performance in foundational subjects. The student's recent assignments also exhibit stylistic similarities to work submitted by another student in the same cohort, raising concerns about potential academic misconduct. Option A. Initiate a formal investigation into potential academic misconduct, gathering all relevant assignment submissions, communication records, and cross-referencing stylistic elements with the other students' work, while adhering strictly to the Qasemi Academic College of Education's established academic integrity policy and procedures. Option B. Contact the student's parents to discuss the academic performance and the observed similarities in assignments, without first conducting an internal review or informing the student. Option C. Overlook the discrepancies, assuming the student is experiencing personal difficulties that are impacting their academic performance, and proceed with the current grading without further inquiry. Option D. Immediately assign a failing grade for the course to the student, citing the late submissions and grade discrepancies as sufficient evidence of academic dishonesty. The correct answer is A. Initiate a formal investigation into potential academic misconduct, gathering all relevant assignment submissions, communication records, and cross-referencing stylistic elements with the other students' work, while adhering strictly to the Qasemi Academic College of Education's established academic integrity policy and procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between academic integrity and the need to support student success. The Qasemi Academic College of Education, like any educational institution, operates under a framework that prioritizes fair assessment and the accurate reflection of student learning. The challenge lies in identifying and addressing potential academic misconduct without unduly penalizing students who may be struggling due to legitimate reasons. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine academic difficulty and deliberate attempts to circumvent assessment requirements. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based investigation into the observed discrepancies. This entails gathering all relevant documentation, including assignment submissions, grading rubrics, and any communication with the student. The process should be guided by the Qasemi Academic College of Education's established academic integrity policies and procedures, which are designed to ensure fairness and due process. This approach upholds the institution's commitment to academic rigor and the value of its qualifications by ensuring that assessments accurately measure student achievement and that any instances of misconduct are handled appropriately and consistently. An incorrect approach of immediately assuming academic misconduct and imposing a penalty without thorough investigation fails to adhere to the principles of due process and fairness. It risks penalizing a student based on assumptions rather than evidence, which is ethically unsound and likely violates the college's internal regulations regarding student assessment and disciplinary procedures. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the discrepancies, perhaps due to time constraints or a desire to avoid confrontation, undermines the integrity of the assessment process. This inaction allows potential academic misconduct to go unchecked, devaluing the efforts of honest students and the credibility of the college's academic standards. It also fails to provide the student with an opportunity to understand and rectify any potential issues, which is a fundamental aspect of supportive academic guidance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a commitment to upholding academic integrity. This involves a proactive stance in understanding and applying the college's policies on academic honesty and assessment. When discrepancies arise, the first step is to gather objective evidence. This evidence should then be analyzed against the established policies and procedures. If there is a reasonable basis for concern, the next step is to engage with the student in a constructive and transparent manner, providing them with an opportunity to explain the situation and present their perspective. Throughout this process, maintaining confidentiality and impartiality is paramount. The ultimate decision should be based on a thorough, fair, and documented investigation, ensuring that any actions taken are proportionate to the findings and in line with the college's regulatory framework. Question 3. Comparative studies suggest that the effectiveness of certain pedagogical approaches can be influenced by the socioeconomic background of students. A research paper published by a prominent educational institute claims to have definitive findings on this matter, recommending a specific teaching method for all incoming students at Qasemi Academic College of Education. However, closer look reveals that the research was funded by a company that manufactures educational materials designed for the recommended approach, and the study's methodology involved a relatively small sample size from a single demographic. Considering the principles of academic integrity and evidence-based practice expected at Qasemi Academic College of Education, which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response to this research paper? Option A. Immediately adopt the recommended teaching method as it is based on research from a prominent educational institute, assuming its findings are universally applicable. Option B. Dismiss the research entirely due to the potential conflict of interest, without further examination of its methodological strengths or weaknesses. Option C. Critically evaluate the research methodology, sample size, potential conflicts of interest, and the generalizability of the findings before considering its recommendations. Option D. Prioritize anecdotal evidence from educators who have used similar teaching methods, as this provides a more practical perspective than the published study. The correct answer is C. Critically evaluate the research methodology, sample size, potential conflicts of interest, and the generalizability of the findings before considering its recommendations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between academic integrity and the potential for bias in educational research. The college entrance exam requires candidates to demonstrate an understanding of ethical research practices and the ability to critically evaluate research methodologies. Careful judgment is required to identify research that is both methodologically sound and free from undue influence, ensuring that admissions decisions are based on merit and objective assessment. The correct approach involves critically evaluating the research methodology and potential conflicts of interest. This aligns with the principles of academic integrity and ethical research conduct, which are paramount in educational institutions. Specifically, it requires scrutinizing the sample size, control groups, data analysis methods, and the funding sources of the study. The Qasemi Academic College of Education, like any reputable institution, would expect its prospective students to recognize the importance of evidence-based decision-making and to be wary of research that may be compromised. An incorrect approach would be to accept the research findings at face value without critical examination. This fails to uphold academic rigor and could lead to flawed conclusions being incorporated into the college's admissions policies. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the research solely based on the perceived prestige of the institution conducting it, without evaluating the actual scientific merit. This demonstrates a lack of critical thinking and an over-reliance on authority rather than evidence. Finally, an approach that focuses on anecdotal evidence or personal opinions rather than the systematic findings of the research would also be professionally unacceptable, as it deviates from the scientific method and objective evaluation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes evidence-based reasoning, ethical considerations, and a critical evaluation of all information. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue and its implications. 2. Gathering relevant information and evaluating its credibility and methodology. 3. Considering ethical principles and potential biases. 4. Weighing different approaches based on their alignment with established standards and best practices. 5. Making a reasoned decision supported by evidence and ethical justification. Question 4. The audit findings indicate potential irregularities in the recent admissions cycle at Qasemi Academic College of Education, suggesting that some applicants may have been admitted without meeting the full, documented criteria, possibly due to external pressures or internal policy misinterpretations. The college's leadership is now tasked with addressing these findings. Which of the following represents the most appropriate and ethically sound course of action for the college administration? Option A. Implement immediate disciplinary actions against admissions staff based on the preliminary audit report without further investigation to signal a zero-tolerance policy. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive and impartial investigation into the audit findings, reviewing admission records, interviewing relevant staff, and comparing practices against established college policies and national educational guidelines to determine the extent and cause of any discrepancies. Option C. Engage in damage control by selectively sharing information with external bodies and downplaying the significance of the audit findings to protect the college's reputation. Option D. Immediately dismiss the audit findings as a procedural oversight and proceed with the next admission cycle, focusing on meeting enrollment targets. Correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive and impartial investigation into the audit findings, reviewing admission records, interviewing relevant staff, and comparing practices against established college policies and national educational guidelines to determine the extent and cause of any discrepancies. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to meet institutional targets. The audit findings highlight a potential breach of ethical guidelines and regulatory compliance concerning the admission process. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the college's objectives with the responsibility to ensure a fair and transparent selection process, adhering strictly to the Qasemi Academic College of Education's established admission policies and any relevant national educational regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective investigation into the alleged irregularities. This means gathering all relevant documentation, interviewing key personnel involved in the admissions process, and comparing the actual practices against the documented policies and procedures. The justification for this approach is rooted in the principles of accountability, transparency, and fairness, which are fundamental to any educational institution's ethical framework and regulatory compliance. Specifically, it upholds the integrity of the admission process, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated based on merit and adherence to stated criteria, thereby preventing any form of undue influence or preferential treatment that could violate established guidelines. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the audit findings without proper investigation. This failure to act demonstrates a disregard for the audit process and the potential for systemic issues within the admissions department. It risks perpetuating unethical practices and could lead to more severe consequences if the irregularities are indeed present, including reputational damage and potential sanctions from regulatory bodies overseeing higher education. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately implement punitive measures against individuals based solely on the audit findings, without a fair and thorough investigation. This premature action violates principles of natural justice and due process. It could lead to wrongful accusations and damage the morale and trust within the institution. Furthermore, it bypasses the necessary steps to identify the root cause of any issues, which might be systemic rather than individual misconduct. A third incorrect approach would be to attempt to manage the situation by downplaying the findings or selectively presenting information to external stakeholders. This lack of transparency is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It undermines trust with regulatory bodies, prospective students, and the wider academic community. Such actions can lead to severe penalties and a loss of credibility for the Qasemi Academic College of Education. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Acknowledge and take seriously all audit findings and external concerns. 2. Initiate an independent and impartial investigation to ascertain the facts. 3. Consult relevant internal policies, procedures, and any applicable national educational regulations. 4. Gather evidence systematically and interview all relevant parties. 5. Based on the findings, determine the appropriate course of action, which may include policy revisions, staff training, disciplinary actions, or corrective measures. 6. Ensure transparency in communication with relevant stakeholders, as appropriate. Question 5. Regulatory review indicates that an educator at Qasemi Academic College of Education is responsible for grading a final project for a student whose parent is a close personal friend of the educator. The educator has no direct personal relationship with the student, but is aware of the family connection. The project has been assessed against a predefined rubric, and the educator is confident in their ability to apply it objectively. However, the educator is concerned about potential perceptions of favoritism or bias, even if none exists. What is the most ethically and professionally sound course of action for the educator? Option A. Inform the student's parent directly about the personal connection and ask for their input on how to best proceed with the grading to ensure fairness. Option B. Discreetly consult with a trusted senior colleague for advice on how to approach the grading, without explicitly mentioning the personal connection to the student's family. Option C. Assign a slightly lower grade than the rubric might otherwise indicate to preemptively avoid any appearance of favoritism. Option D. Proceed with grading the student's project strictly according to the established rubric, ensuring all assessment criteria are met and documented, and maintain complete confidentiality regarding the personal connection. Correct answer is D. Proceed with grading the student's project strictly according to the established rubric, ensuring all assessment criteria are met and documented, and maintain complete confidentiality regarding the personal connection. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical and regulatory obligations of an educator within the Qasemi Academic College of Education. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to uphold academic integrity and fairness with the potential for personal bias or external pressure to influence assessment outcomes. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all students are evaluated objectively and that the college's established assessment policies are strictly adhered to. The correct approach involves a commitment to the established assessment rubric and a transparent, objective evaluation of the student's work. This aligns with the Qasemi Academic College of Education's commitment to fair and equitable assessment practices, which are implicitly governed by internal regulations and ethical codes of conduct for educators. The educator's primary duty is to assess based on merit and adherence to academic standards, not personal relationships or external influences. This approach ensures that the college's reputation for academic rigor is maintained and that all students have an equal opportunity to demonstrate their learning. An incorrect approach would be to deviate from the established assessment rubric due to a personal acquaintance with the student's family. This action would violate the principle of impartiality, a cornerstone of ethical educational practice. It introduces bias into the evaluation process, undermining the credibility of the assessment and potentially disadvantaging other students who have performed equally well or better but lack such a connection. This failure directly contravenes the implicit regulatory framework of fair assessment expected within any academic institution. Another incorrect approach would be to consult with colleagues for an opinion on how to grade the student, without disclosing the personal connection. While collaboration can be beneficial, doing so without full transparency about the potential conflict of interest is ethically unsound. It risks creating a situation where colleagues might inadvertently be influenced by the educator's unspoken bias, or the consultation itself could be perceived as an attempt to legitimize a biased decision. This bypasses the direct responsibility of the educator to conduct an objective assessment and adhere to college policy. A further incorrect approach would be to assign a grade that is demonstrably lower than the student's performance warrants, solely to avoid the appearance of favoritism. While the intention might be to appear unbiased, this action is equally detrimental to academic integrity. It constitutes a form of unfairness by penalizing a student based on external perceptions rather than their actual academic achievement. This misrepresents the student's learning and violates the educator's duty to accurately reflect their performance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the college's assessment policies and ethical guidelines. When a potential conflict of interest arises, such as a personal connection to a student or their family, the educator must proactively identify it. The next step is to consult the relevant policies to determine the appropriate course of action, which may include recusal from the assessment process or seeking guidance from a supervisor or department head. Transparency and adherence to established procedures are paramount to maintaining professional integrity and ensuring fair assessment for all students. Question 6. Consider a scenario where, during the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance examination, an invigilator observes a candidate exhibiting signs of significant distress, repeatedly looking at their paper with a confused expression and appearing to be on the verge of tears. The candidate is not overtly cheating, but their struggle is evident, and they seem to be seeking nonverbal cues or assistance. The invigilator is concerned about the candidate's well-being and their ability to complete the exam, but also acutely aware of the strict rules against providing any form of assistance. What is the most appropriate course of action for the invigilator in this situation? Option A. Speak to the candidate in a hushed tone, asking if they need help and offering to explain a particular question they seem to be struggling with. Option B. Continue to monitor the candidate's progress without intervention, documenting any specific behaviors that might indicate a need for further investigation by examination authorities. Option C. Discreetly approach the candidate and offer a subtle hint or clarification on a general concept to help them regain composure and continue with the exam. Option D. Offer the candidate a brief break outside the examination hall to compose themselves, with the understanding that they will not receive any further assistance upon their return. The correct answer is C. Discreetly approach the candidate and offer a subtle hint or clarification on a general concept to help them regain composure and continue with the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and ensure fair assessment practices, as mandated by the Qasemi Academic College of Education's entrance examination regulations. The challenge lies in balancing the need to assist a candidate who appears to be struggling with the strict prohibition against providing unauthorized assistance during an examination. The college's guidelines emphasize that all candidates must demonstrate their own knowledge and abilities without external support. The correct approach involves recognizing the candidate's distress and the potential for academic dishonesty, while adhering strictly to the examination rules. This means refraining from offering any form of direct or indirect help, such as hints or explanations, and instead following the established protocol for addressing potential irregularities. This protocol typically involves discreetly observing the candidate, documenting any observed behavior that might indicate cheating, and reporting the incident to the invigilator or examination supervisor for their assessment and action. This upholds the principle of fairness to all candidates and the integrity of the examination process, aligning with the college's commitment to academic standards. An incorrect approach would be to offer any form of assistance, even with good intentions. Providing hints or explanations, regardless of how subtle, directly violates the examination regulations that prohibit any form of unauthorized aid. This undermines the validity of the examination results and creates an unfair advantage for the candidate receiving the help, thereby compromising the college's commitment to equitable assessment. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the situation entirely. Failing to address potential academic misconduct allows for the possibility of cheating to go unaddressed, which is a dereliction of professional duty and erodes the credibility of the examination system. It also fails to uphold the college's responsibility to ensure a fair testing environment for all participants. The professional decision-making process in such a situation requires a clear understanding of the examination rules and ethical guidelines. Professionals must first identify the potential issue, then assess it against the established regulations. If a potential violation is observed, the next step is to act in accordance with the prescribed procedures, which typically involves observation, documentation, and reporting to the appropriate authority, rather than direct intervention that could compromise the examination's integrity. Question 7. Market research demonstrates that prospective students are highly influenced by perceived career success and the unique advantages of an educational program. Qasemi Academic College of Education is developing its promotional materials for the upcoming admission cycle. Which of the following approaches best aligns with ethical marketing practices and regulatory expectations for educational institutions? Option A. Present a comprehensive overview of the college's academic offerings, faculty expertise, and campus facilities, while downplaying any information regarding graduate employment rates or specific career outcomes to avoid setting potentially unmet expectations. Option B. Focus on the aspirational aspects of higher education, using evocative language to describe the transformative potential of a degree from Qasemi, and implying that all graduates will achieve exceptional financial rewards and societal recognition, irrespective of individual effort or program specifics. Option C. Highlight the college's exclusive partnerships with international organizations, suggesting that all graduates will automatically secure high-paying jobs abroad due to these connections, without detailing the specific nature of these partnerships or the criteria for placement. Option D. Emphasize the college's commitment to fostering innovation and leadership, showcasing testimonials from a few highly successful alumni who have achieved prominent positions, while also clearly stating the general career pathways available to graduates and the typical duration of study for each program. The correct answer is D. Emphasize the college's commitment to fostering innovation and leadership, showcasing testimonials from a few highly successful alumni who have achieved prominent positions, while also clearly stating the general career pathways available to graduates and the typical duration of study for each program. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to attract prospective students and the ethical obligation to provide accurate and non-misleading information. The Qasemi Academic College of Education, like any educational institution, must adhere to principles of transparency and integrity in its recruitment and marketing efforts. The challenge lies in balancing promotional enthusiasm with factual representation, ensuring that potential applicants are not unduly influenced by exaggerated claims or incomplete data. Careful judgment is required to navigate this balance, upholding the institution's reputation and respecting the applicant's right to informed decision-making. The correct approach involves presenting a balanced and realistic overview of the college's strengths, supported by verifiable data and clear caveats where necessary. This aligns with the ethical guidelines for educational institutions that emphasize honesty in advertising and recruitment. Specifically, it requires the marketing team to focus on demonstrable achievements, current program offerings, and realistic career prospects, avoiding speculative or unsubstantiated claims about future success or unique advantages that cannot be objectively proven. Transparency about admission criteria, program structures, and potential challenges is paramount. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on highlighting aspirational outcomes without providing context or evidence would be ethically problematic. This could involve making broad statements about graduates securing top positions without specifying the types of positions, the time frame, or the proportion of graduates achieving such outcomes. Such an approach misleads prospective students by creating unrealistic expectations and failing to equip them with the necessary information to make an informed choice. It violates the principle of honesty in advertising and could lead to disappointment and a perception of misrepresentation. Another incorrect approach would be to omit crucial details about program requirements or potential difficulties in completing studies. For example, if a program has a high attrition rate or requires significant additional effort beyond standard coursework, failing to mention this information is a form of deception by omission. This prevents applicants from fully understanding the commitment involved and the potential challenges they might face, thereby undermining their ability to make a well-considered decision. This failure to disclose material information is a significant ethical breach. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough review of all marketing materials against factual data and ethical standards. This includes consulting with academic departments to ensure program descriptions are accurate, verifying any statistical claims, and considering the potential impact of the messaging on prospective students. A framework of truth in advertising should be applied, ensuring that all claims are substantiated, clear, and presented in a manner that avoids ambiguity or exaggeration. The ultimate goal is to empower applicants with accurate information to make a choice that is best for them, while upholding the integrity of the institution. Question 8. The investigation demonstrates that during the review of Ms. Alia's application for admission to Qasemi Academic College of Education, an admissions officer discovered evidence of undisclosed academic misconduct from her previous educational institution. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of fair and ethical admissions practices within the context of an academic institution's regulatory framework? Option A. Initiate a formal review process to gather all relevant details about the prior academic misconduct. Consult Qasemi Academic College of Education's admissions policy regarding disclosure and prior disciplinary actions, and then make a decision based on the findings and established criteria. Option B. Proceed with the admission of Ms. Alia without further inquiry, assuming the previous institution's disciplinary process was sufficient and the omission was unintentional. Option C. Immediately reject Ms. Alia's application upon discovering the undisclosed misconduct, citing a breach of honesty in the application process. Option D. Contact Ms. Alia's previous institution to obtain a detailed report on the misconduct and use this report as the sole basis for deciding her application, without allowing Ms. Alia an opportunity to respond. The correct answer is C. Immediately reject Ms. Alia's application upon discovering the undisclosed misconduct, citing a breach of honesty in the application process. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where a prospective student, Ms. Alia, has submitted an application to Qasemi Academic College of Education. During the review process, an admissions officer discovers that Ms. Alia has a history of academic misconduct at a previous institution, which she did not disclose on her application. This situation presents a professional challenge due to the ethical imperative of academic integrity and the college's responsibility to maintain fair and honest admissions practices. The admissions officer must balance the need for thoroughness with fairness to the applicant, while adhering to the college's stated policies and any relevant educational regulations governing admissions. The correct approach involves a thorough, fair, and transparent investigation into the undisclosed academic misconduct. This entails gathering all relevant information, including the nature and severity of the misconduct, the disciplinary actions taken by the previous institution, and any mitigating circumstances. The admissions officer should then consult Qasemi Academic College of Education's official admissions policy and any applicable regulations concerning the disclosure of prior academic issues. The decision regarding MS/alias application should be made based on these policies and regulations, ensuring that the process is consistent and equitable for all applicants. This approach upholds the principle of academic integrity, promotes fairness, and ensures compliance with institutional guidelines. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject MS/alias application based solely on the discovered information without further investigation or due process. This fails to provide the applicant with an opportunity to explain or address the situation and may violate principles of natural justice. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook the undisclosed misconduct, thereby compromising the integrity of the admissions process and potentially admitting a student who has demonstrated a disregard for academic honesty. This would set a poor precedent and could undermine the college's reputation. A third incorrect approach would be to make a decision based on personal bias or external pressure, rather than on established policies and objective criteria. This would be a clear breach of professional ethics and institutional governance. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to institutional policies and ethical guidelines. This involves a systematic process of information gathering, objective assessment against established criteria, consultation with relevant stakeholders or policies, and transparent communication of the decision and its rationale. In cases of undisclosed information or potential academic misconduct, the framework should include provisions for investigation, applicant response, and a decision based on evidence and policy, ensuring fairness and integrity. Question 9. The analysis reveals that an applicant to the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam has submitted a portfolio containing detailed descriptions of extensive volunteer work and leadership roles in various community organizations, accompanied by letters of recommendation from individuals associated with these organizations. However, preliminary review of the organization's public records and websites suggests a significant discrepancy in the scale and duration of activities described by the applicant compared to the organization's actual operational scope and typical volunteer engagement levels. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Accept the applicant's portfolio at face value, assuming the provided information and recommendations are accurate, and proceed with the application review. Option B. Schedule an interview with the applicant to directly question them about the discrepancies, without first attempting to verify the information through external sources. Option C. Immediately reject the applicant's application due to the perceived inconsistencies, without further investigation, to maintain the integrity of the admissions process. Option D. Conduct a thorough verification process by contacting the listed organizations and individuals to confirm the applicant's claimed involvement and responsibilities before making a final decision. Correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough verification process by contacting the listed organizations and individuals to confirm the applicant's claimed involvement and responsibilities before making a final decision. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where an applicant for the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam has presented a portfolio that appears to contain fabricated evidence of extracurricular involvement. The situation is professionally challenging because it directly tests the integrity of the admissions process and the ethical responsibilities of the admissions committee. The committee must balance the desire to admit qualified students with the imperative to uphold fairness and prevent academic dishonesty. Careful judgment is required to distinguish genuine achievements from fabricated ones without unfairly penalizing deserving candidates. The correct approach involves a thorough, evidence-based investigation into the applicant's claims. This entails cross-referencing information provided in the portfolio with verifiable sources, such as contacting the organizations listed for confirmation of participation and duration. If discrepancies or clear fabrications are identified, the appropriate action, in line with the principles of academic integrity and fair admissions practices expected by educational institutions like Qasemi Academic College of Education, is to reject the application based on the evidence of misrepresentation. This upholds the college's standards and ensures a level playing field for all applicants. An incorrect approach would be to immediately accept the portfolio at face value without any verification. This fails to uphold the college's commitment to academic integrity and could lead to the admission of a student who has misrepresented themselves, undermining the trust placed in the admissions process. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the application solely based on suspicion without conducting a proper investigation. This could lead to the rejection of a potentially strong candidate due to unfounded doubts, which is unfair and unprofessional. A third incorrect approach would be to confront the applicant aggressively without concrete evidence, potentially creating an adversarial situation and compromising the college's professional demeanor. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, identify potential red flags in the application materials. Second, develop a plan for verification of questionable claims, prioritizing objective evidence. Third, conduct the verification process diligently and impartially. Fourth, if evidence of misrepresentation is found, follow established college procedures for handling such cases, which typically involve rejection of the application. Throughout this process, maintaining professionalism, fairness, and adherence to the college's admission policies and ethical guidelines is paramount. Question 10. Compliance review shows that a member of the Qasemi Academic College of Education's admissions committee has a close personal friendship with one of the applicants. The committee member is aware of this relationship and is concerned about how to proceed ethically and in accordance with college guidelines. What is the most appropriate course of action for the committee member? Option A. Discreetly advocate for the applicant's admission to other committee members without formally disclosing the relationship to the entire committee. Option B. Participate in the discussion and vote, but disclose the personal relationship to the committee beforehand, arguing that their insight is valuable. Option C. Continue with the admissions process as usual, believing that their personal relationship will not influence their objective evaluation. Option D. Immediately inform the admissions committee chair of the personal relationship and recuse themselves from all discussions and voting related to that applicant. The correct answer is D. Immediately inform the admissions committee chair of the personal relationship and recuse themselves from all discussions and voting related to that applicant. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential for bias and the need to uphold academic integrity within the Qasemi Academic College of Education's admissions process. The admissions committee member's personal relationship with an applicant creates a conflict of interest, requiring careful navigation to ensure fairness and adherence to the college's established guidelines. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the committee member's duty to the college with their personal connection. The correct approach involves recusing oneself from any discussion or decision-making concerning the applicant. This upholds the principle of impartiality, a cornerstone of fair admissions processes. By stepping aside, the committee member avoids any perception of undue influence or favoritism, thereby protecting the integrity of the admissions committee's deliberations and the college's reputation. This aligns with ethical standards that demand transparency and the avoidance of conflicts of interest in professional settings, particularly within educational institutions responsible for selecting future educators. An incorrect approach would be to participate in the discussion and vote, arguing that their personal knowledge of the applicant's character is beneficial. This fails to recognize that even well-intentioned personal involvement can introduce bias, consciously or unconsciously, and undermines the objective evaluation criteria established by the college. It violates the ethical imperative to avoid conflicts of interest and can lead to accusations of unfairness, damaging the credibility of the admissions process. Another incorrect approach would be to disclose the relationship to the committee, but then proceed to advocate for the applicant's admission. This still represents a conflict of interest, as the disclosure does not negate the inherent bias introduced by the personal relationship. The committee member's advocacy, even if framed as providing additional insight, is tainted by their personal stake, compromising the committee's ability to make an unbiased decision based solely on the applicant's qualifications and suitability. A further incorrect approach would be to ignore the relationship and proceed as if it does not exist. This is a direct violation of ethical conduct and potentially college policy. It demonstrates a lack of integrity and a disregard for the principles of fairness and transparency. Such an oversight can have serious repercussions, including the invalidation of the admission decision and disciplinary action against the committee member. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve immediate self-identification of potential conflicts of interest. This should be followed by a proactive step to consult relevant college policies or a designated ethics officer. The primary goal is to ensure that personal relationships do not compromise professional duties or the integrity of institutional processes. Recusal from any decision-making related to the conflicted party is generally the safest and most ethically sound course of action. Question 11. To address the challenge of maintaining academic integrity and fairness in the admissions process for the Qasemi Academic College of Education, an applicant who has already submitted their application requests permission to submit supplementary materials that they believe will significantly strengthen their candidacy, even though the official submission deadline has passed. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound and ethically compliant approach? Option A. Allow the applicant to submit the supplementary materials, as these may enhance their profile and contribute to a more comprehensive evaluation of their potential. Option B. Politely inform the applicant that the submission deadline has passed and that applications are evaluated based on the materials submitted by that date, adhering strictly to the college's published admissions policies. Option C. Suggest the applicant reapply for the next admission cycle, implying that their current application is no longer viable due to the missed deadline and the nature of their request. Option D. Forward the applicant's request and supplementary materials to the admissions committee for a special review, outside of the standard evaluation process. Correct answer is B. Politely inform the applicant that the submission deadline has passed and that applications are evaluated based on the materials submitted by that date, adhering strictly to the college's published admissions policies. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and fairness within the Qasemi Academic College of Education's admissions process. The challenge lies in balancing the need to support a candidate who may have genuine potential with the imperative to uphold the college's standards and ensure a level playing field for all applicants. The applicant's request, while potentially stemming from a desire to improve their application, borders on seeking an unfair advantage by attempting to influence the evaluation process after the initial submission. Careful judgment is required to discern between legitimate requests for clarification or minor corrections and attempts to manipulate the assessment. The correct approach involves a principled stance that upholds the established admissions criteria and procedures. This approach prioritizes fairness and transparency by adhering strictly to the college's stated guidelines for application submission and evaluation. It recognizes that the admissions committee is tasked with assessing applicants based on the information provided by the deadline, and any deviation from this process could compromise the integrity of the selection. Ethically and regulatorily, this aligns with principles of equal opportunity and non-discrimination, ensuring that all candidates are judged on the same merits. The Qasemi Academic College of Education's entrance exam framework implicitly mandates adherence to its published admission policies, which are designed to ensure a standardized and equitable evaluation. An incorrect approach would be to grant the applicant's request to submit additional materials or revise their application after the deadline. This fails to uphold the principle of fairness by potentially giving this applicant an advantage over others who submitted on time and adhered to the rules. It also undermines the established procedural integrity of the admissions process, creating a precedent that could lead to further requests and a breakdown of standardized evaluation. Such an action could be seen as a breach of the college's internal regulations regarding application submission and a violation of the ethical duty to treat all applicants equitably. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the applicant outright without considering the nature of their request. While maintaining strict adherence to deadlines is crucial, a complete dismissal without any form of communication or acknowledgement of their situation might be perceived as overly rigid and lacking in professional courtesy, potentially missing an opportunity for constructive guidance if the request was indeed minor and well-intentioned. However, the primary failure here is not in the lack of courtesy, but in the potential for compromising the fairness of the process if any accommodation is made that deviates from the established rules. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the college's admissions policies and ethical guidelines. First, Assess the applicant's request against these established rules. If the request falls outside the permitted scope or timeline, a professional response is to politely but firmly reiterate the established procedures and the reasons for their importance, e.g., fairness, standardization. If there is any ambiguity in the policy or the request is exceptionally unusual, seeking guidance from a supervisor or the admissions committee chair is advisable. The ultimate goal is to make a decision that is both procedurally sound and ethically defensible, ensuring the integrity of the admissions process. Question 12. The review process indicates that a candidate for the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam has submitted a portfolio that, while demonstrating significant creative merit, deviates in its formatting from the precise specifications outlined in the official examination guidelines. The guidelines are explicit about the required file types and submission structure. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the absolute priority of adhering only to the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines specified for the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam? Option A. Evaluate the portfolio based on its content and creative merit, making a subjective judgment that the formatting deviation is minor and does not detract from the overall quality, and proceed with the evaluation as if the guidelines were met. Option B. Interpret the formatting guidelines loosely, considering them as suggestions rather than strict requirements, and proceed with evaluating the portfolio based on a broader understanding of academic submission standards. Option C. Seek external advice from a colleague in a different academic institution to gauge their opinion on whether the formatting deviation is acceptable in a general academic context before making a decision. Option D. Strictly adhere to the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam's specified formatting guidelines, noting the deviation and proceeding with the evaluation based on the submitted materials as per the regulations, without making allowances for the formatting error. The correct answer is A. Evaluate the portfolio based on its content and creative merit, making a subjective judgment that the formatting deviation is minor and does not detract from the overall quality, and proceed with the evaluation as if the guidelines were met. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between academic integrity, the ethical responsibility of educators to foster a fair assessment environment, and the specific guidelines of the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam. The need for absolute priority in adhering to the exam's regulatory framework means that any deviation, even with good intentions, can compromise the validity of the assessment and the fairness to all candidates. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing demands. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the submitted work against the established criteria and guidelines of the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam. This approach is right because it directly upholds the integrity of the entrance examination process, ensuring that all candidates are evaluated based on the same, predefined standards. Adherence to the specific regulatory framework of the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam is paramount, as stipulated for this examination. This ensures a transparent and equitable evaluation, preventing any perception of bias or preferential treatment. An incorrect approach that involves making subjective interpretations or allowances outside the explicit guidelines of the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the established regulatory framework, which is the sole basis for evaluation in this context. Such an approach risks undermining the credibility of the entire entrance process and could lead to challenges from candidates who perceive unfairness. Another incorrect approach that relies on external academic standards or general best practices not specifically referenced or incorporated into the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam's regulatory framework is also professionally flawed. Strict jurisdiction requirement for this exam mandates adherence solely to its own specified regulations. Introducing external criteria, however well-intentioned, violates this fundamental rule and introduces an arbitrary element into the evaluation. A further incorrect approach that involves seeking informal advice or opinions from individuals not officially designated to interpret or enforce the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exams regulations is problematic. This bypasses the established channels for clarification and decision-making, potentially leading to misinterpretations or the adoption of non-binding advice. thereby compromising the integrity of the official review process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding and meticulous review of the specific regulatory framework governing the assessment. When faced with ambiguity or a situation that appears to fall outside the explicit rules, the professional should consult the official documentation and, if necessary, seek clarification from the designated authority responsible for the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance, exams administration and interpretation. The decision must always be grounded in the established rules and guidelines, prioritizing fairness, objectivity, and the integrity of the examination process. Question 13. What factors determine the appropriate weighting and application of academic performance, entrance examination scores, and interview assessments during the Qasemi Academic College of Education's admission process, ensuring adherence to its stated regulatory framework? Option A. The established admission criteria and scoring rubrics as formally documented by the Qasemi Academic College of Education, which are designed to objectively measure candidate suitability. Option B. The need to meet specific enrollment targets for diverse academic programs, allowing for flexible adjustments to assessment weightings. Option C. The perceived likelihood of a candidate successfully completing their studies, irrespective of their performance on standardized assessments. Option D. The recommendations of faculty members based on informal impressions of candidates during preliminary interactions. The correct answer is A. The established admission criteria and scoring rubrics as formally documented by the Qasemi Academic College of Education, which are designed to objectively measure candidate suitability. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the academic integrity of the Qasemi Academic College of Education's entrance examination with the need to ensure fair and equitable access for all prospective students. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create a temptation to lower standards, which directly conflicts with the core mission of an educational institution to select qualified candidates. Careful judgment is required to uphold the college's reputation and the value of its degrees. The correct approach involves a rigorous and transparent application of the established admission criteria, as outlined in the Qasemi Academic College of Education's official admission regulations and guidelines. This approach prioritizes meritocracy and ensures that all candidates are assessed against the same objective standards. Specifically, it means adhering strictly to the defined academic prerequisites, the scoring mechanisms for entrance exams, and any stipulated interview protocols. This upholds the principle of fairness and prevents any perception of bias or preferential treatment, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the selection process and the college's academic standing. An incorrect approach that involves prioritizing candidates based on their perceived future potential or connections, without strict adherence to the established criteria, represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This undermines the principle of equal opportunity and can lead to the admission of less qualified individuals, potentially impacting the academic environment and the college's reputation. It violates the spirit of fair competition inherent in any entrance examination process. Another incorrect approach, such as adjusting admission scores or criteria retroactively to meet enrollment quotas, is a direct contravention of regulatory compliance. This practice compromises the validity of the entrance examination and creates an unfair advantage for some candidates while disadvantaging others who met the original standards. It erodes trust in the institution and can have legal ramifications if found to be discriminatory or fraudulent. A further incorrect approach, focusing solely on the financial capacity of candidates rather than their academic suitability, is also ethically and regulatorily unsound. Educational institutions are mandated to select students based on their ability to benefit from and contribute to the academic program, not on their ability to pay. This approach would violate principles of academic merit and could lead to discriminatory practices. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding and strict adherence to the Qasemi Academic College of Education's official admission policies and procedures. When faced with pressure or conflicting priorities, professionals must consult these guidelines, seek clarification from relevant authorities within the college if ambiguity exists, and always prioritize ethical conduct and regulatory compliance over expediency or external pressures. A commitment to transparency and fairness should guide all decisions related to the entrance examination process. Question 14. Quality control measures reveal a potential factual inaccuracy in one of the multiple-choice questions intended for the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance examination. The inaccuracy, if unaddressed, could lead to confusion among candidates and potentially affect the validity of the assessment. What is the most appropriate course of action to uphold the integrity of the examination process, according to the Qasemi Academic College of Education's regulatory framework for academic assessments? Option A. Immediately consult with the relevant academic department and the examination committee to verify the inaccuracy, and if confirmed, revise the question or provide a standardized clarification to all candidates before the examination commences. Option B. Proceed with the examination as planned, assuming the inaccuracy is minor and unlikely to significantly impact candidate performance. Option C. Make an undocumented verbal correction to the question during the examination itself, instructing invigilators to inform candidates of the change. Option D. Remove the question entirely from the examination without any further review or notification to candidates. Correct answer is A. Immediately consult with the relevant academic department and the examination committee to verify the inaccuracy, and if confirmed, revise the question or provide a standardized clarification to all candidates before the examination commences. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to academic integrity and the ethical responsibilities of educators within the Qasemi Academic College of Education's framework. The core issue is ensuring that the entrance examination process upholds fairness and accuracy, particularly when a potential discrepancy is identified in the examination materials. The challenge lies in balancing the need for a rigorous and reliable assessment with the practicalities of exam administration and the potential impact on candidates. Careful judgment is required to address the identified issue without compromising the integrity of the examination or unfairly disadvantaging any applicant. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of verification and, if necessary, correction, strictly adhering to the Qasemi Academic College of Education's internal guidelines for examination development and quality assurance. This approach prioritizes the accuracy and fairness of the assessment by ensuring that all candidates are evaluated on a consistent and correct set of questions. It demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance by following established procedures for handling examination errors, which typically involve review by a designated committee or academic leadership. This proactive measure prevents the use of flawed material, thereby safeguarding the validity of the entrance examination results and upholding the college's reputation for academic rigor. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the examination using the identified flawed question without any attempt at verification or correction. This failure to adhere to quality control measures directly violates the implicit regulatory expectation of providing a fair and accurate assessment. It could lead to candidates being unfairly penalized or advantaged, undermining the credibility of the entrance process and potentially leading to challenges against the examination's validity. Another incorrect approach would be to make an ad hoc, undocumented change to the question during the examination itself. This lacks transparency and consistency, creating an uneven playing field for candidates and failing to meet the standards of a controlled and regulated examination process. A third incorrect approach would be to dismiss the quality control finding without proper investigation, assuming it is a minor issue. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the importance of accurate examination content, potentially allowing a significant error to go unaddressed. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging and documenting the identified issue immediately. 2. Initiating a review process as per the Qasemi Academic College of Education's established examination guidelines. 3. Consulting with relevant academic departments or examination committees to assess the impact and determine the appropriate course of action. 4. Implementing a verified and corrected version of the examination material, ensuring all candidates receive the same, accurate content. 5. Documenting all steps taken for transparency and accountability. Question 15. Operational review demonstrates that an international applicant has submitted a certificate of equivalency issued by the Ministry of Education, but the admissions committee is unsure if this document fully satisfies the college's specific requirements for recognizing foreign academic qualifications. The committee is considering accepting the applicant based on the assumption that the ministry's endorsement implies full equivalency, or rejecting the applicant due to the perceived ambiguity. Option A. Accept the applicant based on the Ministry of Education's issuance of the equivalency certificate, assuming it inherently meets all college requirements. Option B. Proceed with a detailed verification of the submitted equivalency certificate against the Qasemi Academic College of Education's official admission regulations and guidelines for international qualifications, and if any doubt remains, consult the designated academic department for clarification on acceptable documentation. Option C. Seek informal advice from current international students about their experiences with equivalency certificates to gauge the acceptability of the submitted document. Option D. Reject the applicant immediately due to the perceived ambiguity of the equivalency certificate, without further investigation into its validity or alternative documentation. The correct answer is B. Proceed with a detailed verification of the submitted equivalency certificate against the Qasemi Academic College of Education's official admission regulations and guidelines for international qualifications, and if any doubt remains, consult the designated academic department for clarification on acceptable documentation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the need to balance the college's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions and potential external pressures. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and applying the Qasemi Academic College of Education's admission regulations, particularly concerning the documentation required for international applicants. The college's reputation and the fairness of its admissions process are at stake. The correct approach involves a thorough and systematic review of the applicant's submitted documents against the explicit requirements outlined in the Qasemi Academic College of Education's admission regulations. This approach prioritizes adherence to established procedures and ensures that all applicants are evaluated on a consistent and fair basis. Specifically, it requires verifying that the submitted equivalency certificate from the Ministry of Education is indeed the required document for international qualifications, as stipulated by the college's guidelines. This upholds the principle of regulatory compliance and maintains the integrity of the admissions process, preventing potential future issues arising from non-compliant admissions. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the verification process and accept the applicant based on a verbal assurance or a document that is not explicitly recognized by the college's regulations. This bypasses the established regulatory framework, potentially admitting a student who does not meet the academic prerequisites. This action undermines the college's admission standards and could lead to academic difficulties for the student and reputational damage for the institution. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the applicant without a thorough review of the provided documents, and without exploring the possibility of alternative, acceptable documentation if the initial document is indeed insufficient. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and could unfairly disadvantage a qualified applicant. It fails to consider the spirit of the regulations, which is to ensure academic suitability, and may overlook valid pathways for international students to demonstrate this suitability. A further incorrect approach would be to seek external advice from individuals not directly involved in the admissions committee or regulatory interpretation, such as current students or alumni, regarding the validity of the documentation. This introduces an unreliable and potentially biased source of information, deviating from the established internal procedures and official regulatory guidance. It risks misinterpreting the college's specific requirements and could lead to inconsistent decision-making. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory framework. Clearly identify and understand the Qasemi Academic College of Education's admission regulations, including all requirements for international applicants and their documentation. 2. Thorough document review. Systematically examine all submitted documents against the stated requirements. 3. Seeking clarification internally. If there is ambiguity regarding a document's validity or equivalency, consult with the designated admissions committee or relevant academic department responsible for interpreting the regulations. 4. Fair and consistent application. Ensure that the same standards and procedures are applied to all applicants to maintain fairness and equity. 5. Documentation of decisions. Maintain clear records of the review process and the rationale behind admission decisions. Question 16. Process analysis reveals a potential instance of plagiarism in an applicant's submission for the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance examination. The admissions committee has received an anonymous tip alleging that significant portions of the applicant's essay appear to be copied from an online source. The committee is now tasked with determining the appropriate course of action to uphold academic integrity while ensuring fair treatment of the applicant. Option A. Publicly announce the suspicion of plagiarism to all applicants to maintain transparency in the admissions process. Option B. Immediately reject the applicant's application based on the anonymous tip, citing academic dishonesty. Option C. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged plagiarism, gathering evidence and providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond before making any admission decision. Option D. Proceed with admitting the applicant as planned, assuming the tip is unsubstantiated and not wanting to delay the admissions process. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged plagiarism, gathering evidence and providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond before making any admission decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to academic integrity and the ethical handling of potential plagiarism within the context of an educational institution's entrance examination process. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to uphold the integrity of the admissions process with the requirement to act fairly and transparently towards applicants. A rigorous and unbiased assessment is paramount to ensure that only qualified candidates are admitted, thereby maintaining the academic standards of Qasemi Academic College of Education. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based investigation of the suspected plagiarism. This entails gathering all relevant documentation, including the applicant's submission and any identified sources of potential plagiarism. Following this, a formal review process, as outlined by the college's academic integrity policies, must be initiated. This process typically involves providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond to the allegations and present their case. The decision regarding the applicant's admission should then be made based on the findings of this investigation and in strict adherence to the college's established disciplinary procedures. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant as it ensures due process, fairness, and adherence to institutional regulations, thereby protecting both the applicant's rights and the college's reputation. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the applicant without a thorough investigation. This fails to provide the applicant with natural justice and may lead to an erroneous decision. It violates the principle of innocent until proven guilty and disregards the college's own established procedures for handling academic misconduct. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the suspicion and proceed with the admission as if no issue arose. This undermines the integrity of the entrance examination and the college's commitment to academic honesty. It sets a dangerous precedent and could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, thereby lowering academic standards. A further incorrect approach would be to communicate the suspicion to other applicants or the public. This constitutes a breach of confidentiality and could unfairly damage the reputation of the applicant, even if the suspicion is ultimately unfounded. It also deviates from the college's responsibility to handle such matters internally and discreetly. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the college's academic integrity policies and procedures. It requires objective assessment of evidence, impartial application of rules, and a commitment to fairness and due process for all individuals involved. Professionals should always consult relevant institutional guidelines and, if necessary, seek advice from designated academic or administrative authorities to ensure compliance and ethical conduct. Question 17. Stakeholder feedback indicates concerns regarding the perceived subjectivity in the evaluation of certain application components for the Qasemi Academic College of Education's upcoming academic year. As an admissions officer, how should you address this feedback while strictly adhering to the college's established admission regulations and guidelines? Option A. Inform the stakeholder that the admission process is inherently subjective and that their feedback cannot be formally addressed as it falls outside the scope of established procedures. Option B. Propose an ad hoc adjustment to the evaluation criteria for the specific components in question to address the stakeholders' perception of subjectivity, even if it deviates from current published guidelines. Option C. Review the college's official admission regulations and guidelines to identify any provisions related to the evaluation of the specific application components mentioned and communicate any clarifications or reaffirmations of policy to the stakeholder. Option D. Share anecdotal examples of successful applicants whose applications were evaluated under similar perceived subjective criteria to reassure the stakeholder about the fairness of the process. Correct answer is C. Review the college's official admission regulations and guidelines to identify any provisions related to the evaluation of the specific application components mentioned and communicate any clarifications or reaffirmations of policy to the stakeholder. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for transparency and responsiveness to stakeholder concerns with the imperative to adhere strictly to the Qasemi Academic College of Education's established admission policies and procedures. Misinterpreting or misapplying these policies can lead to unfair treatment of applicants, damage the institution's reputation, and potentially result in legal challenges. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any communication or action taken is both ethical and compliant with the college's regulatory framework. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the college's official admission regulations and guidelines. This approach is right because it ensures that any decision or communication regarding an applicant's status is grounded in the established, transparent, and equitable rules set forth by the Qasemi Academic College of Education. Adhering to these regulations demonstrates a commitment to fairness and due process for all applicants, upholding the integrity of the admission process. It also provides a clear and defensible basis for any actions taken, protecting both the applicant and the institution. An incorrect approach that involves making an exception based on the perceived potential of an applicant without explicit provision in the regulations fails to uphold the principle of equal treatment. This bypasses the established criteria and could be seen as arbitrary or preferential, violating the spirit and letter of the admission policies. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the feedback entirely, is professionally negligent. It fails to acknowledge legitimate concerns raised by stakeholders and misses an opportunity to clarify or reinforce adherence to existing policies, potentially leading to further misunderstandings or a perception of unresponsiveness. Finally, an approach that involves communicating speculative or unofficial information about the admission process to the stakeholder is also professionally unsound. This can create false expectations, undermine the official admission channels, and potentially lead to disputes if the actual outcome differs from the speculative information provided. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding and applying the relevant institutional policies. This involves 1. Identifying the specific policy or regulation that governs the situation. 2. Consulting official documentation for clarification if needed. 3. Evaluating the stakeholder's concern against the established policy. 4. Communicating a decision or explanation that is consistent with the policy, transparent, and respectful. If the policy allows for discretion, this must be exercised within defined parameters and documented appropriately. Question 18. The performance metrics show a significant variance in student engagement levels between the mathematics and Arabic language departments at Qasemi Academic College of Education, with the Arabic language department exhibiting notably lower engagement. The college's internal guidelines emphasize a commitment to fostering inclusive and effective learning environments for all prospective teachers. Which of the following actions best reflects a responsible and compliant response to this situation? Option A. Advise the Arabic language department to adjust its curriculum to more closely mirror the structure and content of the mathematics department's successful engagement model, regardless of disciplinary differences. Option B. Implement mandatory, additional training for all faculty in the Arabic language department on general engagement strategies, assuming their current methods are the primary cause of the disparity. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive review of pedagogical approaches, resource allocation, and student support mechanisms within the Arabic language department, while also examining potential contributing factors in the mathematics department to identify root causes and develop targeted interventions. Option D. Reallocate a portion of the Arabic language department's budget to departments with higher engagement metrics, citing the need to optimize resource utilization for maximum impact. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive review of pedagogical approaches, resource allocation, and student support mechanisms within the Arabic language department, while also examining potential contributing factors in the mathematics department to identify root causes and develop targeted interventions. Explanation: the performance metrics show a significant disparity in student engagement across different academic departments at Qasemi Academic College of Education. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an administrator to interpret data, identify potential systemic issues, and propose interventions that are both effective and compliant with the college's internal policies and any overarching educational regulations relevant to teacher training institutions in the specified jurisdiction. The challenge lies in moving beyond mere observation to actionable, ethical, and compliant solutions. The correct approach involves a thorough, data-driven investigation into the root causes of the engagement disparity, considering pedagogical methods, resource allocation, faculty development, and student support services. This approach aligns with the college's commitment to equitable educational outcomes and the ethical responsibility to provide a supportive learning environment for all students. It necessitates adherence to Qasemi Academic College of Education's internal guidelines on academic assessment, student welfare, and faculty performance, ensuring that any proposed interventions are fair, evidence-based, and contribute to the overall quality of teacher education. An approach that focuses solely on disciplinary action against underperforming departments without understanding the underlying issues is ethically flawed. It fails to acknowledge that disparities can stem from systemic factors beyond departmental control and can lead to unfair penalization, potentially violating principles of procedural fairness and institutional support. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing a one-size-fits-all intervention across all departments, ignores the unique contexts and challenges of each discipline. This can be inefficient, ineffective, and may not address the specific reasons for low engagement in certain areas, thus failing to meet the college's obligation to provide tailored support. A third incorrect approach, which involves dismissing the data as statistical anomalies without further investigation, represents a failure in due diligence and a disregard for the potential impact on student learning and future educators. This neglects the professional responsibility to proactively address issues that could compromise the quality of education. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the data and its implications. This involves consulting relevant college policies, seeking input from stakeholders, faculty, students, department heads, and conducting a root cause analysis. Interventions should be designed based on this analysis, with clear objectives, measurable outcomes, and a plan for ongoing monitoring and evaluation, always ensuring alignment with ethical principles and institutional mandates. Question 19. Operational review demonstrates that a candidate for the Qasemi Academic College of Education's entrance exam has submitted documentation that appears to meet the general criteria, but contains a minor discrepancy in the format of a supporting certificate, which is not explicitly addressed in the published entrance exam regulations. The admissions officer is unsure how to proceed. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action according to the Qasemi Academic College of Education's regulatory framework for entrance exams? Option A. Seek guidance from a general educational consultant who is familiar with university admissions processes in the region, but not specifically with Qasemi Academic College of Education's internal rules. Option B. Consult the official Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam regulations and any supplementary guidelines from the admissions committee to determine the appropriate interpretation and procedure for handling such discrepancies. Option C. Contact a former admissions officer for their opinion on how similar situations were handled in the past to guide the current decision. Option D. Make a judgment call based on the perceived intent of the candidate and the overall strength of their application, assuming the discrepancy is minor enough not to warrant rejection. The correct answer is B. Consult the official Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam regulations and any supplementary guidelines from the admissions committee to determine the appropriate interpretation and procedure for handling such discrepancies. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the need to balance the college's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions under potentially ambiguous or evolving guidelines. The core difficulty lies in interpreting and applying the Qasemi Academic College of Education's specific entrance exam regulations when faced with a situation that doesn't fit neatly into predefined categories. Careful judgment is required to ensure fairness to all applicants while upholding the standards set by the institution. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Qasemi Academic College of Education's official entrance exam regulations and any supplementary guidelines issued by the admissions committee. This approach is correct because it prioritizes adherence to the established legal and regulatory framework governing the college's admissions process. By consulting the definitive source of rules, the admissions team ensures that their decisions are grounded in institutional policy, thereby promoting fairness, consistency, and transparency. This aligns with the ethical obligation to treat all applicants equitably and to operate within the bounds of the college's authority. An incorrect approach that involves making an ad hoc decision based on personal interpretation or perceived fairness without consulting the official regulations is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the established regulatory framework, potentially leading to inconsistent application of rules and unfair treatment of applicants. It bypasses the due process established by the college and could be challenged as arbitrary. Another incorrect approach, such as seeking advice from external sources not officially sanctioned by the Qasemi Academic College of Education for interpreting its entrance exam regulations, is also professionally flawed. This introduces the risk of receiving inaccurate or irrelevant advice, as external bodies may not be privy to the specific nuances or interpretations of the college's internal policies. This can lead to decisions that are not compliant with the college's own regulatory framework, undermining the integrity of the admissions process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with identifying the governing regulations. This involves locating and thoroughly understanding the Qasemi Academic College of Education's entrance exam rules and any related policies. If ambiguity exists, the next step is to seek clarification from the designated internal authority responsible for admissions policy interpretation, such as the admissions committee or a relevant academic department head. Decisions should only be made after consulting these official sources and ensuring full compliance with the established framework. Question 20. Operational review demonstrates that an international applicant for the Qasemi Academic College of Education has submitted academic transcripts that are certified by a notary public, but not by the issuing institution's Ministry of Education, a requirement that appears to be inconsistently applied in previous admission cycles. The admissions officer is unsure whether to accept this documentation. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework for the Qasemi Academic College of Education entrance exam? Option A. Reject the application outright due to the missing Ministry of Education certification. Option B. Request the applicant to obtain a certification from their Ministry of Education, even if it delays the admission process. Option C. Seek immediate clarification from the Qasemi Academic College of Education's Admissions Committee regarding the interpretation and application of the documentation requirements for international applicants. Option D. Accept the documentation as valid, given the notary's certification and the inconsistency in past applications. The correct answer is D. Accept the documentation as valid, given the notary's certification and the inconsistency in past applications. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the need to balance the college's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions under potentially ambiguous or evolving guidelines. The core tension lies in interpreting and applying the Qasemi Academic College of Education's entrance exam regulations, particularly concerning the documentation required for international applicants. A deep understanding of these specific regulations is paramount to avoid procedural errors that could lead to unfair admissions decisions or regulatory noncompliance. The correct approach involves a thorough and diligent review of the Qasemi Academic College of Education's official entrance exam regulations, concerning international applicant documentation. This approach prioritizes adherence to the established rules, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated consistently and fairly based on the documented requirements. Specifically, it requires seeking clarification from the designated admissions committee or relevant academic affairs office if any aspect of the regulations is unclear. This proactive step is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the admissions process and upholding the college's commitment to transparent and equitable evaluation, aligning with the spirit of the exam's regulatory framework. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with an admission decision based on a superficial understanding of the regulations or by making assumptions about acceptable documentation. This could lead to admitting students who do not meet the college's stated requirements, thereby undermining the academic standards and potentially creating future complications. Another incorrect approach would be to disregard the specific documentation requirements for international applicants altogether, treating them as less critical than those for domestic applicants. This would be a direct violation of the college's own established procedures and could be seen as discriminatory or arbitrary, failing to uphold the principle of equal treatment under the college's regulations. A further incorrect approach would be to rely on informal advice or past practices that are not explicitly supported by the current official regulations. This introduces an element of subjectivity and inconsistency, which is contrary to the objective and rule-based nature of academic admissions. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear identification of the governing regulations. This is followed by a meticulous review of the specific facts of the case against those regulations. Where ambiguity exists, the framework mandates seeking official clarification from the appropriate authority within the institution. This ensures that decisions are not only compliant, but also ethically sound and defensible, safeguarding the reputation and operational integrity of the Qasemi Academic College of Education.